people who no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest, despite he never was in this town. I worked for the radio station, and just did an interview with one of the organizers, where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Want in on this?" He said, "Sure." As he lived on the other side of the country at the time, I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country, they made him and me sign non-disclosure agreements because they were afraid what would citizens think. Avoid it. The cake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There's some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They're these small machines, they look almost like a barbecue grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people's sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath them. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. Just don't tell me how you made holes in donuts. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, for example, JPL, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers, so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission, and a lot of dollars, to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient, the bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them. I even cited the exact language of the non-disclosure agreement I was compelled to sign. I am prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company, I expounded, adding, so ask someone who works here, because I don't. It was a great fuck you moment that I still cherish 5 years later, but now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the non-disclosure agreement language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file. Or even where to look. I suck with computers. Fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient and I suck with computers. This checks out. You know, non-disclosure agreement is only good if you have the money to sue. Worked with a company that didn't pay me, so I told them their non-disclosure agreement didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response: you can't even afford to pay me, you sure as hell can't afford to sue. They also don't extend to keeping you from reporting illegal activity to the justice system. Some places may try to make people believe that and may even try to imply it in the non-disclosure agreement, but it has no legal standing. When I was fired from Anti-Ans in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete/non-disclosure agreement contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products, one of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal/dust/powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit: I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used VeriSite, the loading spinners you see when the report loads aren't waiting for anything. People kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast, so it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously, so the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get it off my chest. This is a good one. Now we just need an elevator engineer to admit that the close door button doesn't actually do anything. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning the bakery would take their old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company. This company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly much more popular bakery. McDonald's made me sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding a robbery that took place during a graveyard shift. They made me take a fucking polygraph test because they thought my ex and I were involved due to the simple fact that I had stopped by that day to pick up some documents. I was a manager, I had business to do. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement to work at this tech company, and I'm still waiting to accidentally overhear something cool so I can feel special for knowing something important but being legally barred from disclosing it. This is something I could spend a lot of time diving into, but the subprime lending company I used to work for as a software engineer spent a lot of time and effort manipulating the UX of our various applications to encourage customers to accept loan terms that were not necessarily in their best interest. I quit pretty quickly after realizing that the people in charge had very little interest in actually supporting us in making a product that would be better for our customers. As a lawyer, I've viewed a lot of these in tort settlements. The most common use of the non-disclosure agreement is to keep the award amount quiet so everyone won't sue the company hoping to get that sweet settlement money. As a lawyer who represents plaintiffs that sign these settlements, I say over and over, do not go post this on Facebook. Don't tell your friends. Just say that it's resolved and you were happy with the outcome. Inevitably a week later I'll get an email from defense counsel with my client's Facebook link on some group. We did it, guys. Just got $XXXXX, comma. Edit, to answer the question then what? In a general answer, it entirely depends on the settlement agreement. Maybe in the corporate world the settlement has to be returned and the release of claims stands. There's a lot examples of losing a settlement agreement. But for our agreements, it would just nullify the agreement and put everyone back to square one, which would then likely settle again. So I just have to reach out my client, chew them out to remove everything, and then send a follow-up to defense counsel assuring them that it's not going to happen again. I like to add your friends and family will all start asking you for money. People will bring up old debts you owe them that you won't remember if they're real or not. Just keep it to yourself or you're going to hate it. This seems to work better than the threat of legal consequences for breaking a non-disclosure agreement. I worked at a gym, and in the showers there was yellow shampoo and blue body wash in pump dispensers. I found out that the only difference between the two soaps was the color. As someone learning to make soap, it's hilarious that in the industry, recipes are protected as trade secrets, but there's literally only so many ways you can make soap. In the IT world, it is often that the piece of internal software or system that gives your company an edge is not quite as huge a deal as it seems. Often it is not much more than a couple of technologies mashed together to automate things in a way nobody else is doing yet. And those things are fiercely guarded. I had cases where people saw stuff in action and tried to replicate it but could not because they were missing just one small piece. I once had to sign a non-disclosure agreement to get a price on a printer for my sign shop. This was a printer that was only sold by one distributor, by the way, so there wasn't even any direct competition on this particular model. I think the gimmick was that if they make a really big deal out of giving you this super secret pricing that you'd be lulled into thinking it was really something special. They weren't worried about you going to a different supplier, they wanted to be able to offer different prices to different customers. This is a concept called price discrimination and is a very common practice. Their machine doesn't do what they want it to, because they designed it and they're not engineers. Also, all investments into their company is investment into a long-term project that they're making out will take way less time than it will. Edit: I never worked for Theranos or Tesla. I actually can't name the company, but it hires 2 people currently. I walk dogs. I'll repeat this: I was a dog walker, and I have signed 3 non-disclosure agreements. It's amazing what people want to protect. It just means he has wealthy clients who don't want photos of their house and pets leaked to the paparazzi. The book you are reading might only be a bestseller because the author had enough money to buy thousands and thousands of copies, have them shipped to a warehouse for storage, and eventually destroyed. We reused buffet-style food served in a cafeteria that we're supposed to compost and record as waste. The health inspector says anything that's left open buffet-style and serve yourself can't be taken back and repurposed because it's not monitored and could be cross-contaminated or many other things. Nobody should ever eat buffet-style if avoidable, but the company I worked for was unhappy about the money they were losing by composting the food, so they make us keep it and reserve it later or repurpose it into soup or casserole or something. Personally, I never did this and just waited for my boss to leave and compost the food, but others I worked with were too worried about losing their jobs to go against orders. I didn't want to be fired but felt morally obligated to not feed people food that was meant to be garbage, so I just sneaky tossed it out when nobody was looking because I got paid really well there. We all had to sign non-disclosure agreements saying we wouldn't tell the media or non-employees about recipes and procedures that covered leftover food and food waste. Eventually my boss discovered what I was doing and I stood up to him about not being willing to reuse garbage as food, so we agreed that I just quit because while they could force me not to talk about it, they couldn't actually force me to do something illegal for my job, and I was clearly refusing to do it. The CEO of a non-profit I worked at was making $500,000 a year. Not necessary info bound to my non-disclosure agreement, but non-profits can still totally suck with income distribution. Do you have such secrets you can tell people? Leave a comment. And subscribe to this channel if you wanna see more same videos.